Hello everybody, good afternoon from Mirko. We're about to start a very exciting episode of Coffee with Mirko. So get yourself seated, get yourself comfortable, get yourself a cup of coffee. I'm brewing my coffee while I introduce you to today's guest. So be ready today. Hey Billy, my man. I'm gonna hit up the water and basically today we are hosting one of the pioneers of specialty coffee worldwide. So his name is Tim Wendelboe, and I'm sure you've heard of him. If you haven't heard of Tim, Tim is the 2004 World Barista Champion, so one of the first World Barista Champions, and he lives in Norway, Oslo, Norway. And there he's a roaster, barista, author, writer, and he has inspired thousands and thousands of people when it comes to coffee, especially when it comes to specialty coffee, because he's all about light, super light roast, and his coffee is known all over the world. So I'm very, very excited to meet with him and have a good chat. As usually, you'll be able to ask some open questions, and you'll be able to ask all the things that you guys want as we go through a series of questions that are prepared, catered for him. So I'm very excited. He's definitely one of the coffee people that I've always looked up to, and many of us have. So I feel very grateful to be in this position to offer myself and you guys a platform where we'll be able to have such an icon as far as coffee goes. So without further ado, we're gonna plunge this bad boy, and then we're gonna jump right into it. So I'm gonna say hi to a few people. Hey Sadie, the Coffest, GZN, Team is in the house too. Hey team, we'll see you in 45 seconds. Hey Fala and Nikolai and all the rest are gonna join us very shortly. So yeah, get yourself a cup of coffee. It's coffee with Mirko time, so ideally this is like a big communal table where we all drink a cup of coffee as we listen, learn, and get inspired by these amazing coffee legends. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So hey Jessica, good to see you again. Galid, it's always good to see you all. And as usual, hope you're safe, hope you are doing it fantastic, and that your family as well is well. So that's always the priority. What I really like is that I was actually able to taste some of Tim's coffee here in Melbourne, and I'm glad I've done that, because not recently, it was about 6 months ago, but we'll talk about it in a minute. My left ear is also very blocked, so hopefully I don't talk too loud or too soft, but we are ready. Coffee's here. It's a natural Mexican coffee from a micro roaster here in Melbourne called Gridlock, and that's what I've been drinking for the past week, and then we'll move on to the next coffee as it's finished. So I'm gonna request it. Right. So let's have a look where Tim is. Okay. Hey Tim, are you still there? It says that you're unable to join for some weird reason. Maybe you can send me through a request. Usually I'm able to send through. Maybe I'll send it to you as a DM and we'll see if that works. This has never happened. Let's have a look. All right. Yeah, I can see you here. It's just I actually have a screenshot, and you can't say. if you go onto your DMs team, I've just sent you an invite to join the live stream. So hopefully that works with that loop. Yeah, usually that works as well. Because when I click on the double emojis, it actually shows that you're not available, which is very strange. And a little bit, hopefully we can fix it. But yeah, it's all right. Technical issues. But if you go back on your direct messages, I've just sent you a link to join the live again. Maybe that works. If not, then we'll work it out. Let's have a look. In the meantime, for people who are joining us, I'm gonna type who we're talking to today. Talking with Tim Wendelboe, and we'll hopefully be able to get that sorted. All right, so bear with us, guys. It's all right. It's a long way from Oslo to Melbourne, so in the meantime, it's about waiting and engaging with you, which is cool. Natasha, Elish, who else we got? Borderless Cafe, passionate about coffee. Good to see you. Manzur Bavi, and then we go DC 58, and here we go. Just connecting.
Sorry, guys.
No, all good.
I had to update my app for some reason.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah. I'm at
Good.
work in my
Good.
lab.
This is the oh. Hello there.
Hello.
That's great to see the magic lab where the magic happens.
Yeah, I'm a bit alone because of the Corona situation, but I have a couple of guys downstairs roasting. So,
which brings me to the first very question: how's
great.
you and your family doing with the situation and the virus? Everyone okay?
Yeah, everyone is okay. The situation is still the country is kind of on a semi-lockdown, so a lot of restaurants and public stuff is closed down. And it means our coffee shop is not fully operating as normal. We're only selling takeaway, and that means we need less staff. And a couple of our team members are actually on temporary leave. But the government pays salary when you're on leave, so I think they get like 66% of their normal salary.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, but for the first month they actually got 100%.
Nice.
Everyone is okay, and everyone is understanding that this is difficult measures needs to be made. And fortunately, we have a lot of online sales, and we are seeing some wholesale clients opening up. So the roastery is going okay, and this week we're actually roasting probably 4 days. Because we have subscription as well, we're sending out subscription to the whole world. So
nice.
I'm working in the roastery today as well, packing coffee and doing whatever needs to be done.
Yeah, you hustling away, and thank you for providing and saving the world with your amazing coffee.
Yeah, if it arrives, because we have so many shipments that are delayed because of the Corona. So if you go, you see like in the States, people are waiting like 3-4 weeks before they even get their coffee. So, it's difficult, but I think we'll survive this.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you and your family are doing well, because that's the number one priority, I believe, at the moment, is keeping safe, and then be grateful for what we have, because I think that sometimes we forget that we got a roof, we got food, we got loved ones and friends. So yeah,
definitely.
100%. Yeah. And we're gonna get through it together. I think this exchange of interviews have really highlighted how well-rounded and strong and tight the coffee community is. Yeah. And we're just gonna have to help each other all along the way, from farm to cup, for sure.
I think the people who will be suffering the most, as always, probably in the end, is the farmer, because I do see a lot of not a lot, but I've seen you know, both importers and roasters canceling containers of coffee that are already produced, you know, and that means, you know, the farmer has to sell it in the normal marketplace for a much lower price, and maybe they spend more money producing that coffee and so on. So I think, you know, at least for me, it's been very important to try to support the farmers we work with, and we even put some coffees on sale just to keep the volume up, you know, because even though we're able to sell a decent amount of coffee, the volume is for sure down because all our wholesale clients are closed. So
makes sense. Look, you're considered a pioneer in the industry, especially when it comes to specialty.
I'm not that old.
No, well, you don't look old, that's for sure. But like, you know, we can easily say, well, you were we're gonna get there later, but you were the fourth person to ever be the world barista champion. So that tells the story. So I believe from memory, 2004. Now, aside from you, what you've done and what everyone knows about you, but how did you actually start in coffee?
Well, it was actually just like most other people, almost by coincidence. I had finished high school, and after high school in Norway, at least back in the days, there were two options. You either went to university or you went to the military. And I didn't want to do any of them. So I wanted to find a job, and back then it was quite hard to get a job in Norway, especially for a 19-year-old. So, you know, I was looking in bars, but I was too young to serve alcohol. I was looking in like hair salons, whatever, you know. And because I'd been working in a grocery store for many years, I didn't want to do that. So there weren't really that many options for me, and I'm not the most physical, strong guy either. So, you know, construction was kind of out of the question. But yeah, I really couldn't really find a job, and then I just went downtown to kind of walk the streets to look if there were anyone like having notes in their windows, which used to be normal back then. And then I found this cafe and started working there, and it turned out to be actually a coffee shop, and was one of the first out of, I think it was like 4 or 5 coffee shops that had opened in like just a couple of years before. So this was in 1998, and I think the first coffee shop opened in 96 or 97 in Oslo. So it was kind of a new thing, and I didn't really know what a coffee shop was. I didn't drink coffee, so, you know, I had never really gone to a coffee shop. And that was it. I went to a 3-hour training at the roastery that owned the coffee shop, and the day after I was working.
Wow.
And that's it. Yeah. So
that's cool.
It was kind of a coincidental, and, you know, because it was new, nobody really knew anything about making good espresso. So the roaster that owned the coffee shop was Solberg and Hansen, which is, you know, one of the pioneers in specialty coffee here in the Nordics. And they were kind of visiting the shop quite a lot, like my old kind of grandmaster, Willie, who taught me how to make espresso. He came in, you know, a couple of times a week, and we would talk about espresso and try new things, and he would bring a grinder for me to test, and it was kind of it was a group of people who really wanted to learn as much as possible about making good espresso. Yeah. So.
Wow, that's a cool story, because I think, yeah, like you said, many of us coffee find us rather than the way around them, which is great, because he brought to the world a lot of amazing people and professionals, and we pushed boundaries and grow as an entire community. And then you won the 2004 WBC in Trieste in Italy, back in my hometown, pretty much, not far from where I'm from.
Yeah.
And with your tiramisu signature drink, which is still quite interesting. And I mean, how defining was that moment for your coffee path and career, but also for Norway?
Well, I think, you know, for me, it was more of an end of a chapter in my career and the start of a new one. I had been competing since 99. So the year after I started working with coffee, I started competing. because the format of the WBC actually started in Norway. So we had like a Norwegian championship that was that format, and the year after they brought the format to the World of Coffee in Monaco, and I went there, and the Norwegian Robert Thoresen won the first World Championship, and we were kind of competing head to head in Norway. So when I saw him winning, you know, it was for me a very good motivation to continue trying to be better and to try to win the World Championship. So when I finally made it in Trieste, I had decided, you know, that was the last year, because I had then been competing for many years, and it took a lot of time and resources to do it. And of course, you close one chapter and a new one opens. So I got the opportunity to travel to Origin and to other countries in Europe like Greece and UK, and to teach, you know, about barista skills, and that kind of took me a little bit away from my day-to-day job, which was I was basically then head of quality control in a chain of coffee shops, the same that I had always worked for, and we were running like 6 coffee shops, and you know, my head was elsewhere. So I decided to leave, and then a year after I opened my own company and started to work for that.
And like you said, you know, since your final, the competition kept and keeps changing and evolving. And, you know, do you think that it helped the coffee movement and changed the old perception of the barista, as in, you know, where now it's seen more as a craft, you know, almost like a craft, and, you know, be treated a little bit more with respect?
Yeah, I think it's been part of it. I don't think it's the only thing that's done it, but it's definitely been part of it. And, you know, I think the competition, at least the first maybe 10 years, maybe even the first 15 years, has really been a catalyst for pushing coffee quality, not just in coffee shops, but also on coffee farms, in roasting, because everyone wants to do better, and everyone wants to support a barista that can win, you know. And the baristas have been asking questions and pushing and communicating more with farmers. So, you know, the timing was right, because internet just happened to start right around that same time. And, you know, communication became easier. Smartphones suddenly became available to the whole world. And all of a sudden I was able to, you know, go on Facebook and send messages to a farmer, which was impossible before, you know.
That's
so
right.
I think, and because we had like a common meeting point, which was the exhibitions and the competitions, that kind of gathered us together, I think, and made and pushed the quality a lot. Today, I think, you know, there's other. I don't think the competition is as important. I think a lot of people have lost a little bit of interest, but it doesn't mean that it's not important at all. I think it's still a great way for baristas to make a career move, but it's definitely not the only way, you know. And it's a very difficult way, because there can only be one winner every year.
Yeah. I think what I was going as well with it is that it gave the chance to a few countries to start moving there. So I think about South Korea, or I was talking with Mikhail yesterday about Indonesia, on how, you know, him being the first Indonesian barista and reaching the world. So I guess all of a sudden you're awake, you know, even Italy with Gardelli, or with Sanapo, or we're looking at, you know, the latest, which is latte art. I think it's just more those countries where I think it's less established, it's a chance to kind of be on stage to say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm the world barista champion. I'm not just your barista giving you your 1 euro espresso, which it gives a little bit more questions and opens conversation. But yeah, no, I agree. These days with the internet as well, there's a lot to it, for sure. There's a lot to go.
You know, I can honestly say that, especially in countries like Colombia, I have a very good friend there who is a barista champion, and he's well respected now, and people actually accept that he's a barista, whereas before this would be, you know, not a good enough job in order to create a family and so on. But Diego, he's actually the current Colombian barista champion. He's now married, has a kid, he's bought a coffee farm, he's a barista, he's a trainer, you know, and that wouldn't be possible without this competition, because the only way that he has been able to kind of gain respect in the coffee industry there is because he has become a champion. And of course, he's been extremely loyal to his employer, and that also, is key. I think, he's a hardworking guy.
100%. And then, like you mentioned, in 2007, you started your roastery cafe, and since then you've been always trying to push the boundaries of coffee based on your pillar, which one of them is obviously transparency when it comes to coffee.
Yeah, when I opened the roastery, I kind of wanted to move away from being known as the barista champion, because I felt that was something that I had already done and kind of belonged in a little bit in the past for me, and I wanted to become more known for what I wanted to do, which was running a roastery, and that meant that I really needed to have very good green coffee and also be able to roast well, and during that kind of quality discovery, I very early on I realized, if I'm going to be able to brew the best coffee and roast good coffee, you really need to have the best possible green coffee, and the only way to know that you have great green coffee is to know the person who actually produced it. So it's a matter of me it's simple. It's you're respecting the suppliers you have, and you're working together. And if I have a problem, they will have a problem. If they have a problem, I will have a problem. It's as simple as that. Yes. And of course, you can be the best roaster in the world and travel to origin every day and cup through thousands of samples and buy the best coffee that year from any given farm. But there's no consistency in it, and it's really hard work, not sustainable, I think, for anyone. And for me, it just meant I decided that I would rather focus on working with a couple of farmers that I really liked working with and where I liked the coffee, and we could try to improve the quality and diversify the quality by planting different varieties, introducing different processes and so on.
I like that. I really like that. I think it's one of the first time that I hear as well out loud, which, I really appreciate. I'm letting that sink in. It reminded me of my very first job when I was in Italy. It was in the wine industry, and it was like a little agency. It was just an export, but they were only using the same Italian vineyards to export because of that relationship. And we always talk about us working in the people industry first, but usually we think barista customer or a roaster cafe. But I think the relationship roaster farmer to be consistent and long term is essential too. I like what you said. For sure.
Yeah, and I have had some employees saying that it's a little boring because we only have the same coffees year after year. We have customers who say the same. But I was actually checking yesterday how many different lots we actually bought last year. 65 different lots, and it's only from we work closely with 4 producers in the Americas and a couple of producers in Africa. So for me, it's definitely not boring, and we're getting a lot more different varieties and different lots from each farm now that have very different flavor profiles. So, and I knew this was going to happen. It's just you need patience, because when you plant a new variety, for instance, it can take up to 10 years before it's actually producing well, because you plant a couple of trees with the farmer, and then you wait 3-4 years before it actually yields anything. Then you taste it. The first harvest is normally not that good, so you'll wait another year, taste it again. If it's producing okay and the flavor is great, then you can plant more, and then you have to wait another 4 or 5 years before it actually produces. So it's quite a long process, but we're on the 5th, 6th, and 7th year in several farms now in this process, and we're starting to see good volumes of. It's not huge volumes, but good enough for us that we can use because we're a small roaster. Yeah,
and look, I think we all know that coffee always tastes different in terms of, every year is going to be slightly more or less different. So, and that's where probably you can also play around more with processing and introducing different things at farm as well as in your roastery. I as far as what you do with the coffee. So it's almost more challenging because if you go and you have 1,000 lots, then you just gonna be like, you know, yeah, I see the challenge, but I think that you like the challenge too of like, let's try to make this coffee taste different than last year. Not different, but better maybe.
Yeah, we always try to make it better. Of course, sometimes nature doesn't allow it to be better. But in my experience, if you're working with a good producer, they will still be able to produce, clean and sweet coffees. And maybe one year it's more fruity than another, But at least in my experience, personally, like I prefer to drink coffees where I know how it's produced and who it's produced of, instead of just drinking a randomly delicious coffee. It doesn't give me the same kind of pleasure,
I get you. Yeah.
Quality is more than just the taste. It's, at least for me now, it's also an intellectual experience, I think, when you drink coffee.
I get you. It's definitely a more, almost like a more intimate relationship in terms of with a cup of coffee, because it's not just a coffee, a delicious coffee, like you said. Yeah. I like the sound of that. And I think it's, there's a lot of stories from you that, you have experience and lots of memories at Origin. So yeah, I appreciate that for sure. And a small curiosity, do you still serve AeroPress at the bar?
Yeah, we do. I was actually trying to introduce batch brew now because of the Corona crisis, and we have to kind of, especially in the weekends, we have now a line out the door because we have to keep distance, and we can only allow 4 people in the store at the same time. And in order to make that move faster, I thought, why don't we just introduce batch brew? But my baristas don't want to. They prefer to make AeroPress, and they said, it's fine. We can easily manage making AeroPress for everyone. And so it's quite popular. And normally we have a popular item on the menu, which is like an AeroPress tasting, where you get 4 coffees served, and it's for 2 people. And I think it's easier to brew with the AeroPress and make the coffee really pop or shine, whereas I think it's easy with pour over as well. But some coffees, at least for me, are even more expressive when you brew them fast on an AeroPress.
Wow, that's interesting. That's cool. And look, briefly on the AeroPress, I've asked you because there's the only cafe in Melbourne who serves AeroPress is also the only cafe who usually serves overseas roasters, and that's where I actually drank your coffee for the first time.
Oh, cool.
Because they serve it. So the guys at Shambles and Little Rogue, so yeah, they always have overseas, and yeah, they had you on rotation. So I was lucky to have your coffee there.
That's great.
And now we got a little question from Passionate About Coffee, New Zealand barista. Obviously, ask how you're doing, and how do you decide your roast finishing time by choosing percentage, dev time, or bean temperature? And the other question is, how did you choose your espresso cup for your different beans? So you serve the espresso in a different cup shape.
Okay, so let's take the cup first. We've actually developed several cups, one with a commercial cup supplier, but that we use them mainly for our AeroPress coffees. And they have different shapes because they will give you different flavor experience depending on the shape. And people who don't believe that, we have the science to prove it now. So I can, there's, what's her name? Fabiana Carvalho, I think it's her name, the Brazilian neuroscientist, and she's been doing a lot of research on cup shape, cup color, cup texture on different coffees, and both with consumers and professional, and in both cases found that people do perceive the same coffee differently in different cups. Which you don't have to be it's easy to understand that, because if you drink Coca-Cola out of a glass or of a coffee cup, it will give you a different experience, So we choose the coffee the cup based on the coffee profile, and for instance, with our coffee from Finca Tamana, we want to kind of enhance the more sweetness of it, because we think that's the kind of best attribute that particular coffee has. So we have a more narrow cup that is kind of tulip shaped to kind of enhance the sweetness and take away some of the acidity perception. Of course, the coffee doesn't change, but you change your perception, and especially the first impression when you drink the coffee. And the second question was regarding roasting and development time and all these kind of things.
Yes.
We actually work a little backwards. We don't theorize too much when we do roast profiling. I think theory can be beautiful, but it's also quite confusing. And so we normally just when we get a new coffee, we'll do a test roast of it. And we're quite familiar with our roasting machine now and the quantity we roast and so on. So we'll just put it in the roaster and just roast it like we think it should be roasted. And timing wise, we are kind of in a sweet spot that we like to be on our coffees. And then once it's roasted, we'll wait 4 or 5 days and then cup it and then analyze the curve and see should we speed it up? Is it astringent? Is it green? Is it a little flat? Is it baked? And then we'll do another test and do adjustments based on what we think, and then that's how we work. And it will take normally 1 or 2 tests before we're happy with being able to sell the coffee. But after that, we will still continue tweaking the recipe, until the coffee is done. And sometimes, you can drift a little bit towards slightly slower or slightly faster, slightly darker or slightly lighter. So you kind of have to do a QC every week and compare a little bit with what you have done in the past and see. So I don't like to talk about development time and temperatures or anything because it's so depending on the coffee and also the roasting machine, how it's set up, what kind of probes you have. I don't like to talk about how curves should look like because that also really depends on the probe placement, the probe thickness, and I think it confuses more than it helps sometimes. And people get obsessed about curves having to look like this or times having to be like that, or in my experience in coffee, things that you learn that is normally just a general rule. But there's so many exceptions to the rule always because coffee is not a one standard product, So you kind of have to start getting to know your own roasting machine, getting to know the coffees you buy. It's smart to try to buy coffees from the same place every year because it makes you more consistent and you start to understand the coffees and so on.
Makes sense. Thanks for that. And apologies for the glare, but I don't have a studio with perfect lighting, but it's all good. No, yeah, that really explained it. And Danny, who was also here on the interview, he confirmed that it's Fabiana Carvalho, and you can find her at Coffee Sensorium. So he's another Brazilian fellow of her, probably. Thanks for that, Danny. And a question that Akeri Gero asks is there a proper way to grind coffee? You're the expert, but there's different ways.
Yeah, I don't think we have gotten to the bottom of grinding for sure. The problem when you shatter beans into small pieces is that you get not just one uniform grind particle size, you get so many different ones. And yeah, we can see that when you have a lot of large particles, they don't extract as well as the small ones for sure. So you probably, in theory, want to have a more uniform one. But then again, if you grind everything to the finest dust, you won't be able to filter the coffee because it will block the filters and so on. So, I'm not sure if there is one way to grind coffee that suits everything. I think, different roast profiles will give you different results anyway, even if you use the same grinder. And a good example is that I actually tried to grind, this was just a couple of months ago. I decided to just see what happens if I take the coffee straight out of the roaster and put it into the grinder and grind it when it's like still 200 degrees. And it was quite a fine setting, but the coffee was so elastic that it came out like, you know, half broken beans only, like huge particles. So that's obviously not great. And we can also see that if the coffee is very moist or lighter roasted, it grinds different than if it's darker roasted and so on. So, you know, the industry tend to favor roller grinders, but I think that's just because we have never been able to test them properly because they're huge and expensive. So we tend to romanticize things that we can't, you know, access. In my experience, yeah, a well-adjusted great grinder will for sure give you sweeter coffee, but it doesn't mean you're not able to brew good coffee on grinders that are not, you know, 100% perfect. I think, you know, yeah, it's great to chase that perfect cup and perfect extraction and everything, but for most people, this is not reality, you know. For most of our clients, they're using a home grinder, and then you have to kind of give them advice that they can use with their equipment and so on. But we're still trying to, you know, find, especially for espresso, we're trying to find better grinders. We're still using row burrs with conical burrs, which, because the grinder is just like a workhorse. And most of the grinders that I've tested that, you know, might have better grind quality have inferior build quality, and in a high volume environment they don't perform well, you know. So yeah, I can't really answer the question whether there is a perfect grind for coffee. I think, you know, different grinders suit different needs and different coffees and so on.
Yeah, and I think we'll go back to, you know, the famous stories, the Matt Perger of the world, or different things. It's all about innovating and trying to keep experimenting, like you are with 200 degrees coffee into a grinder. And I think even at home it works that way in a different way, in a different scale. But ultimately, it's like when my customers, when I used to work for a coffee roaster, asked me what was the perfect recipe, and I was like, just, you know, the one that you think it tastes the better. Like, sure, this is the guide, but ultimately, and in fact, we did several tests where our recipe was not working out the best for them because of their equipment, their barista skill, and, you know, all the other variables. So I think it's just the same with grinding. I think it's just about finding what works for you based on what you enjoy.
Yeah. And you know what even complicates it more is because we do a lot of we sell a lot of coffee to consumers, and we get a lot of emails about, you know, how can I brew, how should I grind, and this is such a difficult question to answer because let's just take water, for instance. If you're brewing with we always brew with boiling water, like as hot as possible, because you lose so much temperature anyway. And the lighter roast really favors very hot water to get extracted well. If you brew with slightly colder water, you know, the brewing time is going to increase because the water is not going to go through the coffee in the same speed. And the same if you have less minerals or more minerals, this will affect how fast the water goes through the coffee. If your grinder burrs are slightly disaligned, you might get more fines and more boulders. You know, if your grinder burrs are more worn down than mine, you know, even if it's the same type of grinder, you can't have the same setting. The paper filters really affect, you know, a paper filter is not a paper filter. Each filter is different. And even the same manufacturer can have different factories supplying them filters. I mean, different brands buy filters from different manufacturers. And the paper filter will greatly impact, you know, the speed of the filtration. So there's so many variables that it's impossible to say how you should grind without me being there and tasting and checking the extraction.
And
so
I think
the best way to start is to start measuring extraction and tasting your own coffee.
Especially for you, I was saying, because I'm sorry for cutting you off, but because you have customers all over the world, so it's like with this Australian roaster I used to work for, our issues were interstate for wholesale partners. So you know, Queensland versus New South Wales and Victoria, or Western Australia, different type of water and filtration systems. But we still had issues. But when you talk about, you know, your coffee is in the water from Boston is very different than the way the water in Norway all the way to Melbourne, and God knows which other countries that buy your coffee. So I get it. It's difficult to answer that question for sure. And
Yeah, it is.
there's another interesting question coming through from Phil. Do you think that it's important to have a taste calibration on a regular basis? I'm talking about calibration with water solutions of lemon, apple acids, sugar, salt, and so on. Thank you.
I don't think it's necessary in order to be a good taster, I think it's a good training tool for sure, to train people to be able to at least do the basic tastes. And I find a lot of customers confusing bitterness and acidity, which is probably the most common mistake in the beginning. And then, I'm not so sure that it's important to be able to discriminate between citric acid and malic acid, because in a cup of coffee, you normally have both anyway. And acidity is more complex than just saying this is citric, Also for me, being a good coffee taster really depends on where you work. Like if you're a barista, you're probably more going to taste or look for bitterness, sourness, these kind of things, and sweetness. If you're a coffee buyer, you're probably going to look more for defects, off tastes, stuff like that. So it really depends on which area in coffee you're going to work. And of course, for me at least, as a green coffee buyer, the best tasters are the ones who are able to kind of isolate one coffee and evaluate that isolated, regardless of what other coffees are on the table. Because it's very easy to, for example, if you come to an exporter and they have quite mediocre coffees on the table, you will still find the best one, and you might score them much higher than if that coffee was on the table with better coffees in general. So everything is in context. So the best tasters are kind of able to really analyze the coffee for what it is, and also have good taste memory, like remembering stuff they have tasted before and so on. And also remember like for instance, when I use notes, they're not for me to impress anyone. It's for me to be able to remember that coffee. So I have kind of my tasting language that I use, because it's for me to remember what I've tasted. Where I think a lot of tasters tend to focus a lot on describing aromatics, and then they forget, mouthfeel, acidity, bitterness. So to answer the question shortly, yeah, I think it's a great training tool to calibrate with these tasting solutions, but it doesn't necessarily make you a better taster, because to become a good taster, you also have to have a lot of experience, I think.
Yeah, lots of practice. Yeah, I see a good friend of mine. He's, competing. So yeah, I get. Yeah, thanks for that.
And I think for me, the best training tool with tasting has been to taste with other professionals who are very good at tasting, and really analyze coffees together and talk about coffees that you taste together.
That's a great tip. Thank you. And Matthew's asking, are you thinking about buying more naturally processed coffee in the future? The Tatmara was absolutely amazing. Also, will the Tatmara come back?
Well, we have bought naturals in the past, and we started buying a little bit last year from Ethiopia. And the reason actually was we're really trying to find a couple of farmers that we can work directly with in Ethiopia. And that kind of opened up last year or 2 years ago. So Tatmara is one of the farms, and we're also trying to buy from a couple of others at the moment. I'm still waiting for samples from Tatmara. He had some issues with a lot of rain in his area, so the drying was slow, and that has delayed a lot the process of finishing the coffee. But given that the coffee is clean and sweet, we will buy it. And I agree that coffee is amazing, and we will probably continue buying natural from Ethiopia. But we're also trying to help both Negusie at Tatmara plantation to invest in a washing station. And we have seen that one of the other farms we're buying from already built a washing station. And the reason why this is good is because, for instance, this year or this season, Negussi at Tatmara was almost not able to produce coffee because he couldn't dry it. It was raining all the time. And with naturals, it's much more difficult to dry when it's wet and humid than if you have washed coffees. Because the washed coffees you can cover, you know, it can, and it dries faster. So we want to help them be able to diversify so that they are able to produce both great naturals and great washed coffees and honey processed if they want to. So yes, we will probably continue buying some naturals, but probably not increase the amount. But it's one of the, you know, if they're good, I enjoy drinking them myself, and we do have customers who love them as well.
100%. And this is a quick question because the answer is very complex. But which type of coffee machines, roasters do you like the most?
The roasters.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, but
well, I guess at the moment I'm using a Rust sample roaster, but they're also, you know, their offices are here. This is the Rust guys.
oh,
That's
thanks
where,
for
that's
the
where
tour.
they make the roaster, and it's a really good sample roaster. And yeah, of course I'm a little bit biased, but as a green buyer, it's fantastic. And also we use a Loring now in production, which I think is fantastic. It's really made our life a lot easier. It's more consistent, less emissions. You know, we use less gas per kilo, and but I'm not saying it's the perfect roaster because that also has room for improvement. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, different companies and people have different needs, different preferences in how the coffee should taste like. So, but for my style and our workflow, the Loring really works well.
Fantastic. I think she meant the actual coffee machine, but that's why as in to use at the cafe.
Well,
I think
a very good answer to that is the best coffee machine to use in a cafe is the one that doesn't break. And if it breaks, you need to have a good service partner. And
correct.
you know, it doesn't matter to have the most fancy machine if there's no good service partner that can service the machine. You know, you're gonna be stuck.
Yeah. That was going to be pretty much my answer because we had actually an issue with some, well, we can't name brands for legal reasons, but yeah, 100%. Saravashi is asking, any estimation for when teams think El Suelo could be productive on a bigger scale?
Oof, yeah, this is difficult. This year, we're actually gonna get a little bit of production from some of the new trees we planted last year. So that's actually very, very fast. Unfortunately, I have not been able to go. I was supposed to be there now, and also to work. But Elias is trying to help me, but also he is struggling getting workers because of the Corona situation. So I'm not sure if it's going to be, you know, producing that well in the next year. It really depends on how we're able to treat the soil and see if we can get things moving. But I'm hoping that, you know, within the next 2-3 years, we will be able to at least sell a little bit of green coffee and maybe even roasted coffee.
Cool. I can't believe that's been nearly an hour because, yeah, time flew. We still got a few minutes, but halfway through my questions, so I'm gonna have to combine some of them. Well, this will be an out-of-the-box question, but what coffee do you usually drink in the morning? Espresso, filter, AeroPress?
No, filter coffee, and I normally choose coffees that are not too high acidity. Like, I prefer to drink like sweet coffees from Finca Tamana or a Catuai from the Caballeros, and then I'll move on to more like aromatic sweet coffee or fruity coffees or something after a while.
And you cover the whole spectrum of coffee. You know, you're a writer, you're author, you're roaster, you're barista. You know, you cover a lot. Active into farms. And I'll combine that with what would you like to see in the future of coffee question. What is your core passion? You know, is it training, is it teaching, is it writing, is it roasting, or is it everything?
I think, you know, it's everything because I feel like working with all parts of the chain really makes the drinking experience for me personally much better. So, you know, in the recent years, I've been spending a lot of time on my farm, and you know, trying to prove that you can grow coffee organically in a good way, and I really hope that I will succeed in that, and that's kind of my biggest passion at the moment, or that's where I spend a lot of energy trying to learn, and you know, yeah.
Cool. And what would you like to see in the future of coffee? I know that we got this big incognito, you know, this big cloud of the virus, but aside from that, what would you like to see?
More commitment from buyers towards farmers. That's you know, if you have good commitment, that can actually be sometimes better than necessarily paying the highest price. You know, if you have roasters and importers that are committed to buying from the same farmers every year and for a good price that is fair, that's what I would like to see.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's something very important, and it's going to become even more important with after COVID-19 for sure. And this is a quick one. Where are you planning to visit Melbourne for the WBC? Are you coming to Australia anytime soon? Well, you know, was that in the plan? Okay.
No, it wasn't. I wanted to, but I had plans to go to my farm and work there with actually one of our roasters. But you know, that's not going to happen. And you know, I'm not going to travel more in the coming years. So when I travel, I have to prioritize my own farm actually, and be there and work there.
So I'll have to come to Norway. It's a good excuse to meet you there. And kind of hovering around the virus, but what's next on Team's planet?
Well, we're trying to make our subscription program even better, making more videos. I just hired a new marketing and digital manager, which is used to be a freelance photographer. So she's more into this kind of photo stuff. Our previous one was more into, you know, programming websites and stuff like that. So she's actually helped us build a new website. But so yeah, we're focusing a little bit more on making more videos and making our subscription program a little bit better and more interactive. Cool.
And I actually really appreciate your content creation, because that's what I do for a living. After all my coffee journey, I'm still in coffee. Basically, yeah, I think there is still a lot of space, and you know, you and James especially do an amazing job online with sharing, and I think it's fantastic with what you guys do in terms of digitally creating and sharing. I mean, when I bought my first AeroPress, I hopped online and I watched your tutorial because I was like, oh, I want to know from the best. I mean, I literally punched in how to brew AeroPress and your video popped up.
Yeah, that's great.
Top 3 searches. So true story too. Now, I always like to ask this question, especially because everyone has such a different perspective and different coaches. But do you have any word of advice for all the people out there who are chasing their coffee or non-coffee dreams? Because I think sometimes we're always stopped and held by insecurities and fear of judgment.
Yeah, well, it's difficult. I'm kind of made my career on really hard work and also determined work. I'm a person that likes to make a plan and stick to that plan and set goals and work towards those goals. So, you know, working hard doesn't help if you don't have a goal and knowing where you want to go, you know. So if you want to become a roaster, you know, it doesn't help to work hard by cleaning the floors in a cafe. You have to kind of really think about how you're going to approach getting that job and, you know, being more active, visiting other people, you know, being, it's a lot of times it's about networking, but in my opinion as well, as an employer, I really value loyalty and hard work. So, yeah, it's difficult, but, you know, honest hard work never hurts, and being a little bit smart about and having a plan for it also helps, I think.
And I'm glad that you brought up the networking side in terms of, I think in this day and age, we forget how easy it is to send a small message like I did with you. I was simply, hey team, I just started this live interview. You want to hop on? And I think it's if you want to be a roaster, you're right. You shouldn't break your back in the back of a kitchen or on the floor, and you just and attend those public events. You're right. I'm always scared with Instagram because then all of a sudden, as you know, it gives you the 30 seconds countdown, and I know you're a busy man. Is there anything that you left off the table that you want to kind of a little plug in or something? Because I know you run your podcast and all of that stuff too. So anything that you want to share before I thank you, because I'm very grateful for this hour with you and amazing chat.
No, I think, what can really help our industry go through this kind of crisis. I know people still drink a lot of coffee, but I think being a little bit more wise about where you buy your coffee can really make a difference for a lot of people, not just roasters and baristas, but also the farmers. So if you're able to buy coffees that are a little bit more transparent, and I think that will at least send a message and help farmers through this as well.
Okay, thanks for that. And you are going live, or you're on a podcast or something like that today at some stage?
Twice. I'm actually doing a Ask Me Anything on coffee farming later today at 4 o'clock, I think it is, CET, so Central European Time. And then at 8 o'clock at night, I'm doing an interview with Federico Bolaños from El Salvador.
Fantastic.
So, it's a busy day for me.
I'm glad. No, it's good, because then if people rewatch it or they missed it, they can catch you elsewhere, which is fantastic. I'm feeling super grateful and thankful for you sharing your stories, knowledge, advice.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming and giving us your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope that one day I'll hop on a plane and come to Oslo and come and visit you and drink some coffee. But until then, stay safe, and we'll keep watching you doing the amazing things that you do for the coffee community. And I thank you on behalf of it, even though I don't represent the coffee community. Yeah, thanks for that. And I really appreciate this chat. It was amazing. This is the positives of the virus, because without the virus, Zoom and all these things were always there, but now it gave us a chance to connect on a different level for sure.
Definitely. Well, thank you for watching, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you, team. Take it easy.
Ciao.
Ciao. There you have it.
I believe that we are a shy 50 seconds away from the live to shut down. I want to just say thank you to all of you who joined. Dynamic Start, there's going to be a recording. It's going to be posted on my YouTube channel as well on the podcast. Usually takes 2 to 3 days, just because I'm reposting the previous episodes. Thank you all for coming in. It was just a huge event, huge episode. Really feeling lots of gratitude. Tim it seems such a good guy too, and I love doing these episodes. So without you, it wouldn't be possible. So I really want to thank you all for being here and telling your friends. The feedback has been great that I've been receiving on a private level. So I'm just gonna shout out you guys. Jessica, you're always here. Brew Theory, my man as well. We're gonna do the Sydney tours. Binaya, Piermont, we got Dynamic, Barista Jacob. I see you. It's not the first time. Papio, Tubra, Lecali Coffee. Who else we got in the building? Passionate about coffee. Coffee Sat, Sasha, and Jimmy, if he's still in the house. Mubarak, Charlie Chua, and what else we got here? Summer Coffee, Sean, and all of you. 51 Coke, thank you. Arigato, you're from Japan. That's the only word that I know. Yeah, amazing. It was just a very, very amazing chat with Tim. I'm gonna post a story about his page if people don't know who he is, so you can check him out. I got a 20 seconds reminder here now from Instagram. So I'm sending you all much love. Please stay safe. look after yourself, and I'll see you tomorrow with the next episode of, as usual, Coffee with Mirko. It's been a pleasure. Take it easy.